Well, hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. I'm Mayor Lauren McLean, and I'm so happy to have an opportunity to visit with constituents and answer questions that we received in advance, but also some from you today. Of course, normally we would do this in person. We had one in person in March, and we've now had to have two virtually, both one in April and now today, but really appreciate people coming together to have a discussion about our community. Before we get to questions, I want to say that I am incredibly proud of the way Boiseans have come together during this tough time, been willing to stay home, been willing to distance themselves from each other, to shutter their businesses, all in pursuit of protecting our public health and ultimately making sure that we can recover in strong and resilient ways by doing it right. And you know, this has changed. I'd say that this pandemic's changed the way we interact. It's changed the way we seek entertainment, the way we work. And while the pandemic won't last forever, I expect that some of these changes will. But at the same time, they've really highlighted, I think for most of us, how important it is that our community and our friends and neighbors and people that care about the things that we care about are able to come together. And so we're all seeking new ways to do that. But I truly look forward to the day when we can come back together face to face and have conversations like this again. Now that I wanted to say also that we are in stage 2 of reopening. And we hear from the Central District Health on a fairly regular basis how we're doing with regard to spread of the virus and counts. And they will help us look at and make a determination around when and how we move to stage 3 with the state based on the parameters that the state set out. But right now with stage 2, it feels great for many of us to head out and to visit stores where we need things, to see restaurateurs that we missed. But then there are still many of us that are waiting to join the community a little bit later. And it's so important that we continue to practice physical distancing, that we use our masks, that we respect and understand that the actions that we take as individuals will have an impact on how we recover as a community and how and when we reopen as a community. And ideally stay open. So please, I've been visiting businesses this week. It's so fun to get out. I really appreciate all the people out there that are doing it right and want to highlight you when I can and just encourage everyone to keep at it because we really need that so we can keep moving forward. I want to just touch on some logistics, and now I'm going to be looking at notes so I make sure I don't miss anything. Lana Graybeal, you see her, she's here, and she will be facilitating the questions. So she collected questions in advance that she'll be sharing with me as we get started, and then she'll move into questions that she's getting in the chat as this progresses through. And so first, early questions that constituents shared, and then live questions. And so, of course, we only have an hour, and that's a tight hour because I've got to get to another appointment. And if we aren't able to get to your question, those are being recorded in the chat, and someone from the city will get back to you with an answer. So, Lana, would you take it from here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. So just quickly to reiterate, we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible within an hour. And you'll notice that for some questions that are similar in topic, I will ask the mayor to address them together. Some I'll paraphrase just for time's sake, and others I'll read verbatim. And as the mayor noted, if we don't get to yours, there is a link in the online form in the chat. So please feel free after this call to submit them, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. And then please include your name and area of town you live in so that the mayor could address you directly as much as possible in this virtual environment. And you'll notice that I'll be turning off my camera as the mayor is answering questions so that the American Sign Language interpreters can be side by side with the mayor. So with that, thank you everyone for joining, and let's start with the first question. So, Mayor, we received actually several questions from community members, including Michael and Bonnie Claire in Northwest Boise and Mark in Southeast Boise, asking about a regional plan for transportation. Could you touch on the work you've done with leaders in the Treasure Valley on improving connectivity, alleviating traffic, and alternative transportation as well?
Sure. Thanks. I think that you said Michael and Bonnie Claire asked that question. Thanks for that question. And we, as you know, one of my top priorities is building the relationships that we need to be able to come together as a region and agree on how we have an actionable plan for transit and that we begin to implement. And so that's, of course, going to be 4 years of work during this term. And with my goal, by the end of it, we know that we have political agreement in the region that we're going to do everything we can to fund and build regional transit. But in the meantime, there are advances that we've made and pieces that we have to tackle of this. First off, from the first week I was here in the mayor's office, I began reaching out to leaders that are involved with transportation. So the highway district, regional mayors, others, and we've continued to work together, unfortunately, around this crisis, but that helps build the relationships that we're going to need to work in the long run on solutions beyond solutions that protect our residents during this COVID crisis. Last year, the city set a goal of 10% with regard to dropping the number of car trips by 10%. And I've said that I hope to double that in the next 10 years. And I believe that we've seen how if people have to, they'll stop driving. And so now it's time to take advantage of the return to work and have those conversations with the community about other ways to get to work. And on that, we have a program called City Go that is working with employers to help employees access other transit options beyond cars. I imagine and expect that as my economic recovery task force comes together, we'll be looking at ways that we can, encourage continued use of work from home for some people and some employers, because that'll help reduce congestion. And then, of course, we had planned on increasing bus service in this next year before COVID hit. And now we have to develop a program to help the public feel comfortable riding buses again. So that will be our focus in the next year, is working to increase bus ridership after we've all experienced the impacts of the virus, so that as people begin to come back to work, we can get them on buses more often. And then from there, work to invest in expanded ridership to connect people from their homes to different job opportunities they might have. And if you have other suggestions, I'd love to hear them, and you're always welcome to send an email like you did with this question with suggestions or ideas or wishes that you'd like to see in our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And similarly, we've received a number of questions around wearing masks, practicing physical distancing. Charlotte, Christy, and Satya, as well as Randy, so lots and lots of questions around this, emailed about protocols for wearing personal protective equipment, such as face coverings and social distancing. Can you talk about the expectations for both individuals and businesses?
Sure. And thanks to all of you that called or emailed with that question. We get that question a lot. And right now we have, I should say, before I go in and answer it, I want to reiterate how much I appreciate seeing members of this community practicing physical distancing, wearing masks. There are some areas and some merchants throughout this community that are requiring them for customers, and I truly appreciate that. And I'll be visiting some today. And then I want to just highlight the fact that the vast majority of people in Boise are being very conscientious when it comes to that distancing. And so I don't want us to get lost in the social media tales of where it's not working, because there are so many places where it is working. And it's those actions that helped us control the surge this winter, and that'll continue to help us reopen in smart ways. So right now in stage 2, our community requires physical distancing. So if you're at the park, with people that you live with. You can stay together, but it's important that you leave at least 6 feet between you and another group of people that are at the park with people they live with, but they don't live with you. And so we've seen examples of that where people are coming together to see grandparents, in-laws, brothers and sisters, but because they don't live with each other, meeting at a park and sitting in their chairs, or even meeting in a cul-de-sac, sitting in their chairs 6 feet apart. That's the right way to do it and the safe way to do this. And we're really encouraging that. Right now, also for businesses, the state has protocols that they're suggesting that businesses use as they reopen. We are requiring that businesses use those protocols in our community. And the reason that we're doing that is because our city is so much more dense than other parts of the state. And we are the economic hub of the state with so many jobs and people coming in and out of our community, that it becomes even more important that we require people to take all the actions that we know work to protect public health, to minimize the spread of the virus, so that we can continue to open the economy, get people back to work, and keep people healthy at the same time. And if we do that well, I am convinced that we'll be able to recover in a more resilient way in the long run. And so it's a responsibility that we at the city and we as residents of Boise have to protect the health of our community and the economy, not only of our city, but in many ways the region. And then on masks, we are highly encouraging, highly advising people to wear masks. And I want to thank, I have my mask here. This is a mask that's made by a fabric and clothing manufacturer in California, so American made. They used to make other things, and with COVID, their lines were shut down. They started making masks. And through the US Conference of Mayors, we received 14,000 of these masks, and we're sharing them. Here you go. My kids are wearing masks. They're more interesting than this. My husband wears a mask. I wear a mask. But we're sharing these masks with nonprofits and service organizations in the community, not sharing, giving. You don't have to give them back. And we still have some left. If there are people out there that don't have access to masks and need them, we want to work with you until these masks are gone. So please reach out to the hotline, the info@cityofboise.org, or the phone number is 208-608-7000 to make that request. And Lana, actually, who's here with us, is helping fill those. And so just to be clear, we're requiring protocols. So if state-based protocols say that employees or clients need to wear masks or are suggested to wear masks, we're requiring that in the city of Boise. And then overall in general, we're requiring 6-foot distancing and then highly encouraging people to wear masks when they're out and about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And along the same vein related to businesses and restaurants, Jane from the Central Bench is looking for a little more clarification on if restaurants are able to open and to what capacity.
Sure, so we are leaving the phasing up to the state and the central district health. And the state said that restaurants were able in phase 2 to reopen. So there are protocols that the state has developed, and we are requiring that restaurants that open follow those protocols. So it's entirely up to the restaurant whether or not they wish to open now. Opening means, from the state perspective, that you can have people in your restaurant to eat in it rather than just pick up or drive through takeout, but only at 50% capacity, and the tables, the sizes need to be limited. I think it's to 6 people per party. And then there has to be space, again, physical distancing between tables, between parties. So those are in the protocols for business. And there are businesses, restaurants downtown that are still maintaining their order out, drive through pickup process and waiting until June to open. But then there are many restaurants that have opened already following the protocols. So restaurant by restaurant, the owners and proprietors of those locations are determining whether or not they wanted to open in May or wait a little bit longer.
Great, thank you. And before we move on to the next question, I just want to remind people that they can use the chat feature in YouTube to ask questions. So please feel free to send those in. We have just a few more that came in ahead of time that I want to make sure we get to, but there will be time for live questions, so feel free to submit those. So shifting gears a little bit, EB from Northwest Boise asked about the city's plan for the upcoming budget to address increasing rising property taxes. Specifically, they asked, will the city be tightening its belt and not taking the 3% this year?
Hi, EB. Thanks for the question. We are working through the budget now, and most city council meetings now, their budget presentations. So I encourage you to follow the agendas that are listed online and join us. You can watch live to see any budget discussions. In fact, next Tuesday morning, I can't remember the time, maybe it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock. It's listed online. We'll have a budget workshop with the city council, and I'd encourage you to watch that, and anybody else, of course, too. And this year, I have proposed to start the conversation taking less than we've taken in the past. And right now I'm looking at 2% rather than 3%. Our staff continues to look at the impacts that COVID has had on our budget, the recognition that we need to support the community in recovery moving forward, but that also the way that we can, as a city, help alleviate the affordability issues around housing is to look at how and how much we increase our revenues from property taxes. I heard that loud and clear, that the community wanted to have further conversation about property tax revenue increases, and that we needed to not just assume every year that we would take it, but instead look at what we could do without. And now, of course, with COVID, residents are hurting. We've asked people to take sacrifices, and we are looking at doing the same thing for our city, while also making sure that we're making investments that will help our recovery, our economy recover, so that we're all stronger and have more opportunity in the future. And in addition to the Tuesday workshop, there will be a full day budget workshop in June. And that's when everything is looked at. The budget book, where our staff presents a budget to the public and to the city council with all the detail, will be released mid-June. And then right now we're designing some public engagement opportunities specifically around the budget. One should take place before the workshop that we have with city council. So sometime mid-June once the budget book's released. And then another one will take place in July before we vote on the budget. And it's the third Tuesday of July, I believe, that the city council will vote on the budget. Lana.
Great, thank you. So the next question is from Peggy, and she's in the central bench. She's asking about our housing for our most vulnerable community members experiencing homelessness. Could you speak to some of the efforts around housing and support services that the city is working on with partners in the community?
Sure. Peggy, I think. Thank you, Peggy, for the question. I want to highlight a couple things on that. Making sure that there are homes that are affordable to all residents at all budgets is a priority of mine. And so beyond looking at housing for those currently experiencing homelessness, we have to make sure that our policies and incentives and actions that we're taking create the environment in which housing is available for people with at all different levels of budgets. And so internally here at the city, I have a team of people working on policy changes and efforts to move us forward in increasing the number of affordable housing units in our community, because ultimately that will help us address homelessness and the needs of those experiencing homelessness. Because if there's housing for people at different income levels and more housing available, then more people can find the homes that they need at the budgets that they have, and people will be able to be placed. So there's a housing component to addressing the homelessness. There's also ensuring that those who are housed don't lose that housing. So evictions and working with organizations that seek to prevent evictions like Jesse Tree is incredibly important, because if you keep people in their homes and don't create a situation where they end up homeless, it's easier to, again, address housing and ensure that we're able to meet the needs of our residents. And then for those experiencing homelessness, Our Path Home is an initiative that the city is involved with a whole bunch of different agencies and service providers throughout the community, that seeks to support residents who need help with housing, and then also seeks to connect those experiencing homelessness with the services they need to be ready to be housed. This winter, I want to say it was late February, early March, we created a fund to ensure that there was actually, we call it a street team through Catch, and the city is supporting the efforts of these teams of healthcare and service providers who are meeting people who are experiencing homelessness where they are and determining how to connect them with the services they need, because ultimately our goal is to help them be ready to move into a shelter and then into home. We are right now with the COVID crisis worked with Interfaith and the Rescue Mission to ensure that those most vulnerable, the medically fragile or families who are experiencing homelessness, had safe places to stay to protect their health this winter as we were reacting to and protecting people from COVID virus. And it's my intent and council's intent that we continue to increase the programs that we have to support people in housing where they're at, to create the market for and the need, the willingness to build housing for all budgets. And then also to look at how we use federal reimbursement from COVID to invest in long-term housing for those who are currently unhoused. Thanks, Peggy, for that question.
Yeah, that was a great one. This one also came up a couple of times, so I am just going to paraphrase the question that came from Anna Marie, Melanie, and Barbara. All three asked about summer activities and recreation opportunities. Specifically, can you touch on why we have made the decision not to open pools this year and when playgrounds may be open?
Sure. I'll touch on playground. I'm just writing this down. And pools for the three of you that asked, and many others have asked as well. And I imagine there's interest on regarding that question online. The playgrounds, I believe, I want to just say I believe, we have a schedule of what we're opening when. And let me explain why we're doing that. We close playgrounds because of the close proximity of people on them, but also because of every day, every week, it seems we learn more about COVID. And we were learning that the virus, the droplets, sit on surfaces and can actually stay there for quite a while. And so at the height of this, as we were shutting things down, we wanted to make sure, because we couldn't, be standing at a playground and cleaning it continuously, that families and kids weren't exposed to the virus that would have been or could have been sitting on that playground equipment. And now, as we're reopening, we're looking at stages of what we can open to the public, based again on recommendations from health experts and our need to ensure that we can keep things clean and prevent large groups of people from being close to each other and then potentially exposed, because we want to get everybody back to work. So we have to make sure that when we're thinking about play, that we're doing it in smart ways so that we don't prevent people from getting back to work. So I believe that playgrounds are in the next stage of our reopening, which if the Central District Health and when the Central District Health and the state say parameters have been met to move to stage 3, I believe it's then that playgrounds will open. Most recently in stage 2, we opened tennis courts and pickleball courts. We've opened a part of the bike park, and we opened the waves at Quinn's Pond. among other things. Oh, and some bathrooms along the greenbelt. Now, on pools, this was a really tough decision. And there's two parts of the decision. There's quite a bit of research out there now that says like, it is safer to be outside. There's less transmission outside than when inside. So when when you're thinking about parks opening, it's not the park that you need to think about as much as it is the bathroom, because the platelets, the particles can be on the bathrooms and spread. When you're thinking about pools, it's not being in the water, but it's about the locker room and the bathrooms at the pools, and then the exposure that people have when they're close, and the reality that it would be really hard for our lifeguards that are young students to monitor that, the distancing in ways necessary, and our concern with the locker rooms and the bathrooms as potential points of exposure and spread. So there's that health piece. And then there's the financial piece. If we were to hope to open pools, but and have to start the hiring process and the maintenance process, it's a lot of money that would have to be spent, and we wouldn't know when we could open them. We'd not be opening them early June, and they close when schools go back in session. And so if we ended up with just an even tinier window with all of that expense and the hiring, when we couldn't necessarily promise that people could go to work and have jobs, but we'd have to hire them regardless. When we made those two calculations, the Parks Department recommended that for this season, we keep them closed. The health concerns, the cleanliness concerns, and then the financial impact on our city combined led the Parks Department to make that recommendation to the city. And we don't take it lightly. We understand, my kids love the pools, how much people love pools. But again, I want to say that this is what we hope will be one summer where we play differently and recognize that we can't do everything we always have done, because we want to get our community back to work, and that it's our sincere hope that we do this. And these couple months, we make play sacrifices about what we're doing in the summer. We are able to continue phasing through and bring more people back to work, open the economy, keep it open. And then before next summer, we have the vaccine and we figured out how better to manage all this, and we're able to get back to normal.
Certainly a hot topic. So I am going to look over to the screen here just because I'm monitoring the YouTube chat this way. And we had a great one come in from YouTube user 2 4exploring, which is...
What's it? Who is that? I didn't hear that.
2 4exploring. I'm assuming that's their YouTube username. And so they are asking, this is in regards to us announcing the potential closure of 8th Street to vehicles and expanded patio dining. And so they're asking, are we also considering some of the one-ways similar to Saturday market days to allow for businesses to expand outdoors, maybe 1 or 2 lanes?
So I appreciate that question. And I want to say too that while 8th Street was a place we could start trying this because the city oversees the street, and we reached out to the Highway District, ACHD, and they were willing to partner with us to change the direction of alley traffic to keep cars off the street. And there are so many businesses there, we thought, let's try this here. But it's our sincere hope that this be something that we can implement beyond downtown and in order to support businesses throughout our community. So the Highway District has said to me that they would be more than willing to continue a conversation to see what's possible beyond 8th Street. And so we're asking businesses that if they need help figuring out if you can use your parking lot as a patio, give our city a call, because our staff can help you navigate that process and there could well be multiple businesses in the same area asking the same thing, and then we have synergies. And if there are other streets that we ought to look at, it's my intention to continue working with leadership at the Highway District to see what we can do. And this is a great partnership between the fire department, the police department, the Highway District, the state who oversees alcohol for restaurants that have licenses, and businesses and neighborhoods. And so it's really our hope that I love the idea related to the Saturday market, but it's our hope that we can help make this happen beyond downtown in various different places.
All right, thank you. I want to just acknowledge that we've seen that a couple of people have joined kind of mid-session, and so I want to, I know you've already answered this, but if we can just quickly touch again on proper physical distancing protocols and wearing a mask coverings. Could you please touch on that again so everyone that's joined has the same information?
Oh, sure. Happy to do that, Anna, and welcome to those of you who have joined. It's great to have you. I wish we were in person and I could see you, but it's really nice to have the opportunity to have these virtual sessions once a month in lieu of in-person sessions while we have to ensure that we protect our public health so that we can all get back to work. And the question around physical distancing, masks, and what can happen right now. Our city has required that people not gather in groups larger than 10, and that when you are out and about at the park, at work, etc., that you maintain 6 feet between you and others with you that don't live in your house. And so we've learned, not we the city, but the world has learned and public health experts have advised that having that distance when you're near people and talking with people is important so that the virus, if you happen to have it and don't know, doesn't spread through your breathing. And so in parks, if you want to see your sister, brother, nieces, nephews, in-laws, etc., go enjoy one of our parks. And I've seen this around the city and I love it. With your little house huddle, you can be next to each other in chairs and then just have enough space between you and the next house huddle. And that's really what we need to do to make sure that we minimize the spread of the virus as we're waiting for a vaccine so that we can all get back to and then stay back at work. And so there's physical distancing that's important. We're encouraging the use of masks. And I have one here. Some of you have already seen this. I have this mask here. And we are here at City Hall, actually. I'm in my office right now. Nobody's in here, so I don't have to have it on. But if we are walking through City Hall or having, if somebody walks into my office, it's a requirement for our employees, and myself included, that we put our mask on so we all have them close by. And it's important to wear a mask because, again, when you get closer than 6 feet, it prevents the spreading the virus from your breathing. And so we're encouraging people to do that. And I just want to acknowledge that so many people in Boise, from the time we asked people in March to start physically distancing before we shut businesses and the community down, and the governor asked you to stay home. And then now as we're reopening, people have been incredibly committed to doing it right. And I think that says so much about Boise. We can get distracted by the pictures and the stories on social media. So many people are frustrated right now that people take to that. And if we fixate only on where it hasn't worked or on pictures that look like it's not working and people aren't doing the right thing, we'll forget and lose sight of the fact that the majority of Boiseans want to have these rules in place and are doing their best to abide by them. I so appreciate the questions that we get from individuals and business owners about whether or not they're doing it right. And then if they're visited by one of our physical distancing ambassadors to point out that there's some things they could do better, the reception that our employees receive from those folks, both citizens and citizens who are business owners, in terms of wanting to do it right when they hear that they need to do something a little better. And those actions that everybody has taken is what made it possible for us to not see the scary, sad stories that we've seen from other cities. And it'll be what continues to help us open our economy and get people back to work. Because until we have a vaccine and the virus is going to ebb and flow, the actions we take as individuals and the expectations we set as a city are so important to making sure that we don't have the fits and starts that none of us want to see, and we know would make recovery from this crisis even more difficult. So physical distancing, 6 feet. Somewhere I have a daily COVID update on my Facebook page, the mayor's Facebook page, that shows what 6 feet looks like and even talks about how you can move around people on trails, because that matters. And then masks where when you go out, when you go shopping, et cetera, are a great way to protect those around you. Thanks, Lana.
Thank you. And Michael just asked on YouTube chat, where did you find that face mask that you mentioned?
Oh, I talked about that earlier. So thank you for that question. These face masks, so first off, if you're just out wanting to buy some, they're at Target now. And I just saw them. I went to Target with my daughter on Sunday, maybe. All the days still blur. And they have them by the shampoo in this little exhibit, but they're made by a garment manufacturer in Los Angeles. So they're American made. And when COVID hit, this manufacturer, like others throughout the country, shut down, but they changed their lines to make these masks. And we received these masks here at the city of Boise through the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And we had 14,000. Oh, here's a box. Bella Canvas. Thank you, Bella Canvas. Somebody just ran in with a box so I could see it. These masks, if you're a nonprofit, a service provider, work with people that don't have access to masks but would like to have one, please reach out to our city. You can email info@cityofboise.org or call the hotline 208-608-7000. That's our COVID hotline. And you'll actually end up connecting with Lana because we are distributing these through a partnership with Bella Canvas and the U.S. Conference of Mayors to those who need masks. And I really like it. And that's why I said you could buy it too if you didn't need to distribute them. I like it because it's light, and I actually run like this when I'm out on busy times. I just have it stuck on my ears and underneath, and that way I can pull it up if I'm going by hikers or others and I can't create 6 feet. I'll just pull it up. And also because when you run, you're breathing even harder. It becomes even more important to make sure that you've got that space or a mask. Thanks for the question.
Great, and I'll take this time really quick just to remind others that are joining us to please use the YouTube chat if you have any questions. We have just a few more to get through that were submitted, but we want to leave time also for live questions. So if you have those, send them my way, and that's why I'm peeking over this way. I'm keeping track of who's sending them in. So with that, we have a question that actually came in over the weekend. Morgan from Southeast Boise asked, are there any Boise Energy Future related infrastructure projects we can expect to see that may be associated with your economic recovery task force?
Did you say, are there any Boise Energy Future projects?
Mm-hmm. That are related, that are infrastructure projects that are related to the task force?
Great. Thanks, Morgan, for that question. And I think you know that this issue is near and dear to my heart, because I believe that if we are innovative in addressing climate and harnessing the opportunity that clean energy brings, we can grow an economy that'll be much more resilient and have much more opportunity in the long run for our residents. And just today, actually, I received an email about Department of Energy grants for shovel-ready projects. So sent that on to our Public Works Clean Energy team because we want to be prepared. And you will see in our budget conversations next week that there are indeed some clean energy investments that we are proposing to make, because we see that as a way to have shovel-ready infrastructure projects that could potentially be reimbursed with federal funds that would create opportunity for our community. And also, I'm committed to beating the goal that we have at the city of Boise of 100% clean energy by 2035. I push for that as a council member and believe that we can beat that. And so our public works team is working on the different steps we need to take this year to make that happen. We're also going to set out on a municipal government carbon neutral plan. So to build out what it'll take for us as a city of Boise government to reduce our carbon impact to zero. And so those will be investments that will create opportunity as we recover. And then, of course, a big part of 100% clean energy and carbon neutrality, but 100% clean energy in particular, because that's a community-wide goal, is taking advantage of energy efficiency so that we're using as little energy as possible so that there's more for others. And we will be looking at how we can equitably provide access to energy efficiency audits and retrofits to help people save money from a housing perspective, but at the same time reap the benefits of clean energy and energy efficiency. So much more to come on that in the next couple of months as we're finalizing budget recommendations. But I'm really excited about the opportunity to meet the goals that we have and recognize that it's even more important than before. Before COVID, we knew we needed more jobs that paid people what they need to live here, that we needed housing that was affordable at all budgets. And there's a direct connection to clean energy and climate innovation and all of that. And now with the crisis, the economic crisis and impacts that COVID has had, it becomes even more important to recognize that we need to harness that opportunity as part of our economic recovery planning. And it's very much a piece of it.
Sorry, it takes a second for me to hit all of the buttons to get back up. So this one is a pretty quick question, but I think an important one because we've seen it on social media as well. Luann from North End asks, when glass recycling drop-off locations will be open?
Did you say Luann?
Luann, yep, from the North End.
Great. Hi, Luann. Glass recycling locations, like I'm thinking that you mean those big bins that are different in different parking lots around the city or different grocery store parking lots around the city. They opened with phase 2. So you can go drop that stuff off now. And also compost pickup. You can now go pick up compost. That's part of phase 2 reopening as well. And Lana, correct me if I'm wrong, or you might not know the answer either, but correct me afterwards if you don't know it. I also think that hazardous waste pickup began in phase 2. So those periodic places that you can go to drop off hazardous waste are now back on the calendar and moving forward. So you can go drop off all those bottles that you've been saving the last couple months, get them out of your house, out of your garage, and you can take them to those bins now.
Yes, that's correct. So compost, just because it's all along the same vein, compost, hazardous household waste, and the glass recycling are all open now.
Great. Thanks.
And then we got a question from Maggie in Northwest Boise. It says, all of my family lives in Alaska, 18 of them. The Idaho Rebound Plan, phase 4, says that entering from outside of the state, you must go through a 14-day quarantine before visiting. They don't know anyone in Idaho, so does their family have to remain in isolation before going to see Maggie?
So Maggie, I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that question. I would recommend that you reach out to the state about that because it's the governor and the state that have developed the phases and what's allowed to be in those phases. And they're best equipped to further clarify what they mean by some of those. I really appreciate that you are paying attention to that quarantine piece, but don't know the mechanics of how it works and would encourage you to ask them, but do appreciate your earnestness. I think this is one of those great examples of people wanting to get it right and that you're asking and that you're having that conversation with your family who's far away but would like to come visit. I really appreciate.
Thank you. And we can share the links again to the state information.
Thanks,
This
Lana.
question is from David. He is asking, or rather saying, the city owns several acres of land that are either going to be used for urban agriculture or could be transformed to becoming urban agriculture spaces. What future, if any, do you see for the city growing food for the community and providing food to the individuals who cannot afford food or locally grown food produce that you might get at the farmer's market?
David, thanks for that question. I am not sure if you're talking about a specific parcel of land. I don't know if it's one that's deemed to be urban ag in the long run, but we as a city are committed to urban agriculture and also to working in partnership with farmers to create spaces for them to grow food, but then also to feed people. And I wanted to highlight, what's the name of the program? Just this spring, we were talking about a program that we have in partnership with the refugee community, because we have 2 parks in the city of Boise where we've designated land to be farmed, and people can actually, as individuals or families, can get a plot within that plot of land to do their own farming. But then there are also CSAs, like community supported agriculture shares, that the public can sign up for, that come from that refugee partnership that we have using City of Boise land to create opportunity for refugee farmers to have a business. And then we also have Boise Urban Garden School that is at a park and brings children in and does lessons on gardening and farming. And we have, fun fact, the City of Boise has our own resident farmer who is based out there, works with bugs, but then also helps us with the plots of lands that we have to make sure that they're well cared for and then distributed for people that wish to farm.
Great, thank you. That program that you were talking about, Mayor, is called Global Gardens, and they also work with Boise Urban Garden School bugs. So it's a great way to support our new Americans. And if the website is Global Gardens, you can just search that and it'll come up and you can sign up for the CSA still. The season is still open and we would love the support from them for them. Okay, I am being mindful of the time here. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one more thing on that. And from some of those plots earlier this year, we actually did harvest some early spring food, and through our Parks and Rec community centers, made sure that that food went to families that needed it. And our Director of Community Partnerships is working with the city, the Boise School District, and some other producers around the valley and food distributors around the valley to make sure that families that are needing food at this time are able to access it. So if you know of specific people who need to be connected with City of Boise team or the school district to ensure that there's food being provided to families that need it, please let us know, because we want to help make that happen.
Thank you. And just being mindful of the time here, we're getting some more questions coming in. I think we should have time for just a few more. This one is a great one related to budget and property taxes. Betty from Southwest Boise is wondering, can City Council focus on limiting the city budget to remedy resident property tax burden? Can we look at other options that residents have to create a more fair assessment for property that has inflated value based on out-of-state buyers?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So we are this year looking at taking less property tax revenue than we have in the past. We're allowed to grow that by 3% every year. And right now our budget is looking at only growing our revenue by 2%. And at the same time, we're asking our departments to make cuts. We're recognizing that you can't give raises the way you would in a normal year, because we need to spend every dollar possible to invest in programs that will help our economy recover and support members of our community. The assessment piece is conducted by the county assessor, and you can find him at the county level. I believe I saw just this week that assessments are going to be going out, and they haven't grown them as much as they have in the past, somewhat on purpose because of what was happening. And the lag time of assessments, though, is a year or two in terms of when it hits your property tax evaluation. So we recognize that affordability is an important issue to all families in our community, and the price of housing has grown in the last 4 or 5 years out of whack with the growth of our wages. And all of that is exacerbated right now in this crisis. So our main source of revenue as a city is property tax. We can't do sales tax. We get a little bit, we get sales tax distributed from the state. We get liquor tax distributed from the state. But the one tool that they give cities to rely on most is property tax. And we recognize that that's how we can most closely impact savings or affordability for each of our residents. And so I have proposed that we look at taking less than we have in the past because it's a piece of the puzzle that we can contribute.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions, as I know we're nearing the end. Christine on YouTube asked, she lives near Garden City and is wondering how city leaders are encouraging others and residents to be good together or to each other, during this time as we're navigating the pandemic. If you have any encouragement or recommendations, I think that's what we're looking for.
That's a great question. And first off, I want to say, the mayors of this region have come together, and we meet weekly to discuss the health impacts of decisions, actions we might take. We try to problem solve together. And I think through this crisis, we'll have built more solid relationships than we've had ever before. And we'll be able to take that and do more good work with it. Each city has tackled this in some ways that are different and some ways that are the same. But especially as someone who lives near Garden City, you know that the back and forth between the 2 communities, you don't even know there's 2 different cities because we move back and forth. I think it is incumbent on each of us to recognize, and we talk about this here. I talk about this here with our leadership team at the city, as does my chief of staff and others, that in times like this, when we're experiencing stressors that we've never experienced before, I hope we never will again. It's that once in 100-year thing that nobody expects, and then suddenly we're in it. And we've been we were forced practically overnight to change the way we work, the way we live. Kids were sent home from college and from school and are at home, and people are trying to juggle expectations of working from home if they still have their job, with taking care of their kids' educational needs. People that have lost work are still waiting for that first unemployment check that they filed 4 months ago. So all of this stuff contributes to an anxiety level that isn't something that is normal for us. And so it's important that we all recognize that as we move into interactions with each other, that interactions on social media can get pitched. And we say here that we just need to create kindness between each other and understand that people are acting in ways not necessarily for any other reason than that the stress of this moment is so high and it's happened. And so I seek ways to find grace in the moment, to explain for myself, but as well as for other people, to recognize that we need to have patience that with each other and with ourselves, and that it's my sincere hope that some of the frustrations that we see working themselves out, where people are talking to each other about whether they're wearing masks or not, or whether they're too close or not, what it is the city's doing and other cities are doing or not, is indicative of the trouble that we're all feeling and all of the expectations on us right now. And overall, I have to say I'm really optimistic because people in this community, as I've said, for the vast majority of them, are doing everything they can to be helpful in this moment, to support their loved ones, family, friends, and neighbors, and to take selfless actions like keeping space, staying home, and wearing masks, all for the good of this city. And when we get through this, if we're able to look back and know that we were kind, that we recognize that this moment created tensions that might make some people behave in a way they haven't before, but we don't hold that against them. And instead we create space and recognize that it was a symptom of the moment. But that ultimately each of us did our best to recognize that and to take actions in support of the community, so that when we come back together, we can celebrate that and be able to know that as an individual that we took steps and did the right thing, but also as individuals that we were willing to forgive when somebody might not have because of this moment. And that at the end of the day is all we have, is the connection we have to each other, our willingness to step back and give someone space and believe that it's not necessarily who they are, but what they're experiencing. And that we check ourselves when we find ourselves starting to do that, so that instead we are kind and trying to demonstrate what it is we want to see from others. If we do that and we grow on the fact that this community came together in incredible ways and made sacrifices, all for the good of others, we will be able to recover in a more resilient and much more deeply connected way in the long run. And I think I'll just leave it at that this is a tough time, and it's a really tough time. And I'm so proud of what people in this community have been willing to give up and give to others to get us through. And I think it bodes really well for our city in the long run.
Thank you, Mayor. And then this last question, I think is a really important one for us to touch on. Anna is asking, do we have, the city, have any resources for kids as we're entering into summertime that offer enrichment and learning opportunities that we can share?
Oh, sure. Good, Anna. Thanks for the question. We, about a month ago, I want to say, so the question was on enrichment activities for kids. We, and especially with school ending, we need to have stuff happening. So we launched a program here at the City of Boise called Be Well Boise, with the intention of creating programming and opportunities for residents to experience something outside of their home while being at home. And as part of that, the zoo is doing programming, introducing animals, and we'll have more as they'll continue to build work there online. The library has story time for young kids online. They even have book gatherings for adults and then some gatherings for teens. And we recognize that not everyone has access to the internet. So there's actually a phone number. Lana, maybe you can share it in the chat. There's a phone number that parents of children can call to have a story read to their child, just through the phone. And then we will be beginning appointments for access to the library, so you can access technology. For those that don't have access to technology, you can get to the library and then experience some enrichment programs there. So please take a look. The City of Boise staff, and also there's arts and history tours, so you can experience historic tours through Boise. You can experience the work of different artists that are involved with the city. And it was our intent to create something first where, because we typically do provide so many recreational and enrichment opportunities for our residents, that our employees that love to do that could create programming and share with residents of the city. And then I also have been encouraging others throughout this community that might have a talent or something they'd like to showcase or share to let us know, and you too can be a part of it, and we can link and share your activities with others. So, and it's called Be Well Boise, and you can get to it through the City of Boise website. And with that, it's 1 o'clock, and I actually have another gathering that I've got to get to. So I think, Lana, if it's okay, I'll just do a quick close, and that is to thank each of you for joining. Thank you for your questions, to encourage each of you to stay involved. We'd love to know feedback as to how this worked and other ideas you might have for ways that we can connect with you, and I can continue to connect with residents and hold true to my monthly listening session pledge in these unique times. But just know that we are committed to working with residents to make good on the future and the vision of a city for everyone, while at the same time doing everything we can to protect public health as we get back to work. I loved the breadth of questions we got today. It's so nice to talk about things beyond the crisis and the virus that at hand, but it's so important also to recognize that we're balancing these two elements of our life right now. All of us are, and we at the City of Boise are too, and that our staff stands ready to serve you and is diligently seeking ways to create programming and investments that will help us recover, and then respond to and engage so that we can hear from you, the public, as we move through this, to have deeper connection and understanding about what people need. So appreciated the time. Wish I could see your faces. Look forward to getting together again and hearing from you in a format like this in June. And take care.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone that participated. Bye.